Hi everybody. That's a really tough act to follow because she was dressed all red and bright and I'm a what you call an invisible photographer, and that's the exact what I wear is exactly the opposite of what she does. Even though we populate the same space, I shoot on the street, and it's in fact that's one of the layers that I come across all the time wherever I go. And of course, today I won't be doing that, even though I've done some stories on that, but that's not one of the layers that we'll be going through today. I have something else for you. And these days, all of us have cameras with us. We carry it in our pockets, in our bags. All of us are photographers, each one of us. And it's and each of us see the city, the world around us in a very the way our minds function or how we think. So it's the the camera is in your mind, and this is how I see the city. And the city here is Mumbai and Greater Mumbai, which is Thane and Navi Mumbai and all the surrounding places. So I'm just bringing uh, that's Mumbai and many layers of it, starting from the mills to the high rises of Worli and that area. The railway tracks that connect it all, the factories, the workplaces, and lots of houses there. And there are a million stories, or probably many million stories here. And I'll just take you all through just three or four stories from Mumbai. It's uh, the journey is not just about the city, or it's also about time. Like this is a picture from Kolaba, and it's the Art Deco capital of the world, and what's new, which is the what do you call the glass and impatient style of uh, architecture, and of course cars that define the city now. And this is Parel, and or I think Lalbagh to be precise, from Enam Joshi Mark. And this is Bombay. In every frame, you have several layers, and we populate many parts of it. In fact, anybody working in town would pass through all of them during the course of the day. The only difference is I probably carry a camera and shoot pictures. Others notice it or are too busy to notice, and it means a lot because Uh, this is I think one. This is also again from Elphinstone, and it's just the picture of a typical family, a Mumbai family. I don't think any of us can afford the place, the space, or we populate the thin layer where I don't know whether it's affordable, unaffordable, but we somehow manage and probably climb up different layers of or steps in life. A taxi driver, he, I don't know how they survive given how much they earn. And this is another layer from I think this is somewhere in town. I don't. I think it's the circle is called Kasturba by Chowk. But just look at the layers of the city, all in one frame. And this is from Navi Mumbai, and this is the Dharaway village, and the new building by I think on Palm Beach Road, and there are many layers to it. So now that you've seen enough, let's go down to the lowest layer that was there in that picture, and that is the village. And this is the village of Dharaway which you pass through, but you only see the big building, you don't see the village that is right below it. And there is a very vibrant community of fishermen who actually live there, who've been living there for ages, and who continue to live for ages, and continue to fish in our shit. And this is how it looks down there. And that is supposed to be the fish that you eat, that you buy from the market. This is where it comes from. And there's a huge there is a complete sub there's a community, there's a city that lives that doesn't live to the clock, like how once upon a time used to live to how the trains, the clock that keeps a city ticking. There's this whole community that actually lives off the tides. uh, they live at a different pace. It's the tides, it's the stars, it's the moon, it's the sun that dictates their time. This is right close by here in Nerul, and that's an old pond, an irrigation pond, which still survives actually, and it's surrounded completely by buildings. And this is Nerul, and it's surprising that it's not polluted. And this is from Kolaba, and there again you have the fishing village, and this is just a picture of a tulsi uh, stand, and still survives. And then there's a city that is disappear. There's part of a city that is disappearing. A village which is the Mud Island, which is filled with a slice of the past, or probably it'll outlive us. Old stories of how old conquests and the church, the religion, the way of life, the way they live, the way water is stored, the art that goes inside each house, and the bylines are very interesting. People come every day shouting, uh, selling their wares. Everything comes to the doorstep, just like in your house. What you'll have to call, but here people come calling. Little things like your the tulsi thing at the doorway, and the feeling of community. The T-shirts they wear. The If you notice, all fishermen wear a T-shirt which actually geotags them or their whatever community they belong to. Every time they go to work, they all wear a T-shirt that actually tells who they are or where they are from, and the conflicts. So this is a guy who calls himself a special executive officer and SEO. No, and it's very interesting. The space where he has his office, it's outside the jetty on Mud Island. And the reason why this guy has a good business is because of the mangroves. And anybody who's driven a bike along our mangroves, which connects anywhere around here, will know that there are a lot of snakes, really large ones, and wherever there is mangroves, you're likely to find snakes. And if any of you are good with snakes, it's a good business to be in. This is another interesting village which is further up. This is actually close to Vasai, and it's a village called Buigaon. And this village has a very interesting story. It's a Christian village, uh, but the people speak a very interesting language, which is a mix of Marathi and Oriya and Konkani, and of course Portuguese and English. And the reason why they speak this strange mix is they were they were here when Basain or Vasai was a or Nalasapura actually to be precise was a city, and this is before the Portuguese came. And there was a Raja who ruled there, a Buddhist guy who brought in this community of artists from Orissa, and they settled down there. And then that Raja's reign ended, and the Portuguese came and they converted, and the language changed. They became landowners, and now there's this pocket. This village Buigaon is a pocket that is still that supplies vegetables actually to most of Mumbai, and they preserve this. But how long will it last? No one can say, because it's already surrounded by the city. You guys will be building the buildings around, or one of these days, and what will go with them is their farming, uh, probably the language, and across the track in More village, which is actually on the uh, part of the Virar city. is this is how the the typical well that they use for irrigation ends up being. So this is what we do to the city. This is an old irrigation well. This is a small territorial marker for a village in Chembur. So the village has disappeared almost, but you still find these old markers from the villages that used to exist there. The church exists, but it's usually surrounded by buildings. This is what usually. These are the East Indian villages, a lot, and there are a lot of them around Mumbai, within the city too, and outside also. This is a temple, and this is from the Devnar village. So the original Devnar village. This is what remains of the Gaudevi temple, and this is a Christ mandir or a Christ temple actually, and this is Vikroli, which is again a East Indian village, and this is Chuim in Bandra, and it occupies a sliver of land between the one of the most expensive real estate and the sea, and this is from Marol. It's just a simple tarp, but it's actually an ad vinyl which has been used as a curtain, but made an interesting picture. It's actually a tarpaulin, the ad vinyl, which has been stripped and used as a cover during the rains. So just interesting light. And this is Chuim village. Like it's a place where you dump garbage. But if you can imagine for a moment that if you didn't dump garbage, it could be a nice place to have sunburn festival. And it's really beautiful, right? Except for the smell. And this is a school in that same area, and this is what they painted on the sun. So this is how they see their village. But what they say, if they turn around, they'll see Salman Khan's bungalow. So and then there are politics there too, and like parts of the village which have Dalit population, part of it which is artists who keep from all over India who are looking for cheap rent in that area. And then there are places like Smokehouse Delhi, which makes it romantic. The old village. And this is from closer home. This is from Vashi, and this is sadly something that has disappeared in the last 3 years. And this was probably the last few ships that were built or repaired in Vashi. Uh, for the past year or two, very few ship or I haven't seen any boats being made actually. So it used to have a pretty decent industry of boat makers who have completely disappeared now. These are fishing boats that are made in Vashi village. It's right next to the toll plaza in Vashi, the Vashigaon toll plaza. They used to make ships over there. It was hidden behind the mangroves, but now it's even the mangrove in that section has gone, and none of these guys survive. And most people, of course, there are a few fishermen left, but most of them have changed their jobs. And this is the sculpture that is at the middle of Vashigaon, and which is a surfing fisherman. It's a strange picture because they look at themselves as superheroes and adventurous, but yeah, surfboard. This is but the funny thing is that's the village which has no surf at all because they don't even have a beach; they only have mangroves. And of course, Bollywood. And it's a how life changed because earlier it used to be a Koli woman used to sell fish to you. Now it's a Bengali guy who comes with a fish right to your doorstep. And now this lady is actually the one who sells fish in the place where I work, which is in Chembur. and she comes every day and she sells it doorstep to doorstep. And this is a village called Abu, and it is inside Film City. And that's an actual farmer who lives and farms inside Film City, and it's also used for shooting. And this was an ad for a Bhojpuri ad which you're doing with Ravi Kishan. So, you, so we made good use of the place. This is an interesting one. This is the Worli village, which has a disco. It's probably the village. You would have probably read about it in the newspapers that there's this place called Chef Cafe, which had a real trouble with the Worli villages. So this is disco inside Worli, and this is in a village called Borla, which is in Chembur, and it's a very it's a very nice place actually. This temple over there, because every full moon night they have a program, and they get people from all over Maharashtra. They get artists, singers, and all kinds of people, and they still don't watch television, or pre-television day can be enjoyed if you want to. This is Vadavali village in Chembur, which is again a very close knit community, and they try to uh, keep the city out as much as they can. And simple things survive. Like you can see uh, food, like the basic thing, like what you probably would have heard about yesterday. It's pre-packaged days of consuming food, where people buy, takes time, uh, and curate good food. And this is one of the major uh, economic activity of most of the villages in Mumbai for the women, and that is Lijat Papad. They have about 37 or 40 collection centers. You go to any village, gaon which survive, and you are likely to find a collection center somewhere around. And this is a school, and this is the saddest part about the villages of Mumbai, and that is they don't have decent schools. The schools are dying or they are dead, and they're basically uh, of absolute no use when it comes to education. They're just broken down pieces of real estate. This is some interesting wall art, but it shows the amount of or the lack of respect for basic education for a certain part of our, our society. In the sense, it's only people who have money who get education. All the rest are just it's just school for the name of having schools. The pictures are pretty, but everything else is bad. And this is anybody who's been to one of the malls in Thane would have seen this, and that's the farms that exist within Thane. Thane has a lot of these farms where people have refused to give up their farmlands, and you still find places like this within Thane. And this is a place called Bail Bazaar, and it's next to the airport. And again, it's a small village that survives right next to the Mitti River, the river that runs the. It's a drain, but it used to be a market once upon a time for cattle. And this is a actual coop where jungle fowl and the regular Indian, the wild roosters and hens are. You find these coops, and this is right in the middle of the city, somewhere in Chembur. So there's an empty spot, and somebody's actually built up a coop. And this is an interesting story, which I guess all the architects and urban planners would like. And this is the sculpture that is found outside Desai village. Yeah. Okay. And it's very interesting because I don't know how many of you answered. There was an ad that keeps it's all over town for a city called Pallava. You would have all heard of it. And if I don't know if any of you have gone to their sales pitch, and if you go there, they have this huge map of a city which rivals Navi Mumbai, probably bigger according to them, and it's filled with all kinds of. It looks like Singapore or any of those smaller city states, and it's pretty large. And what you notice is that it's just modernity, and it's one huge city, which is actually the same length as Navi Mumbai across the hills. And but the minute you go out and look, what you see are villages, and that map that is presented to you at the sales pitch does not mention any of those villages, doesn't mention any of the things that you see on ground. Now, what is the so suppose you buy into that city, or you look at the futuristic city and you actually live there. What is going to happen to the villages over there? What are those? What about the people who live there? Are there going to be any conflicts between the people who like uh, the middle class or the Aam Aadmi who goes in there and the people who actually live there? So, but and this sculpture is actually a kind of a territorial marker, a kind of thing, identity to show that we exist, and it's right there on the highway. You can't miss it. And this is what basically it is: living in a city, or if you're a village, it's a dog eat dog or fish eat fish. And probably as architects or urban planners or whatever, these are there are invisible people, and there are like cyclists. None of us notice them. So it's the same thing with people. And that comes to another layer, which is probably the bottom the bottommost one, and those are our children and their playgrounds. And uh, in Mumbai, if you start a school, you are not required to have a playground. Uh, I think Gino would be able to, but you don't need to have playgrounds in Mumbai if you want to start a school. And people and There's a nice piece of art that I saw around a school. So and just it's just beautiful pictures. But uh, the worst city in the world probably for playgrounds or for children is Mumbai. Navi Mumbai is better off, but Bombay is probably the worst. And it's you can see it like half the conflicts that you see, half the problems that you see. I have colleagues who live in chawls and who come to work, and almost all the problems that they face, even middle class people, especially people who live in the southern part of Mumbai, is that there is no space, there is no personal space for anyone. Everybody lives together, and the amount of mental health problems or frictions that happen is terrible. I can't even imagine how bad it could be for kids. This is a typical park in M ward, which is the poorest ward in Mumbai, which is Chembur, Mankud, that area. And this is how the parks are maintained. And they all have the same playthings or the which you can see here. It's a standard design, and they are invariably as bad as this. And the contrast is the one in Navi Mumbai. You should thank your stars that if you live in Navi Mumbai, because this is a city which has some decent amount of public space for kids, where probably the poor and the rich, all kinds of people come and play in the same playground, which is something that you'll rarely find in across the creek. And this is Nariman Point, and you would have seen the Times of India campaign for equal streets. But this is one place where it happens every Sunday, where the roads are taken over by people who uh, have rights for kids and where kids can actually play. And this happens every Sunday. And just some pictures of playgrounds from Mumbai. This is how we fly kites. This is a rinks. This is actually a picture from Bangalore, which is actually trying to become another Mumbai, and this is a school playground. This was all that they had, and it was a school that had up till 10th standard. So you can imagine. And this is Navi Mumbai. This is the playground of today, and it's. I think it's. We are open to paying for playing, but we don't demand playgrounds. And can anybody tell me what game is being played? No, it's actually rugby, and this is being played in Shivaji Nagar. And they actually play rugby. I'm not joking. They actually play rugby, playing the proper rules. Rugby with a rugby ball. Yeah, you have a better view of the. Actually, the backstory is that these kids are trained by a group of rugby players in South Bombay. The Rahul Bose kind of one of those. Yeah, so they supply the, yeah, and they do a pretty good job because it's a game that these kids enjoy. And this is of course Shivaji Park, and that's the new Shivaji Park, and that's how we play cricket now. And this is Naray Park in Parel, where they still play Coco and in tennis court games like that, which used to be very popular in the 80s and 70s. So they still play it, and there are people who kabaddi, for example. These are the games that are played there, and it's a beautiful place, and they want to build a swimming pool here. This is in Chinchpokli, and would be wrestlers, and the same wrestlers playing with mud. And this is something that you find in the poorer parts of town where kids make up their own games. They don't have playgrounds, but that won't stop our kids from innovating. And that's a seesaw. That's another seesaw with discarded auto rickshaw seats, and pretty innovative. They just picked up things from the street and created their own. And this is the craze right now, and they are tops. And I think a container landed from China with plastic toys or plastic tops, and unlike the ones that we used to play with, which were wooden, these are plastic. The rules are the same. You still have to break the top, but since they're plastic, they don't break easily, so the game is a little more intense, like almost uh, like the 2020 cricket. See there, that's them playing. You need to hit strike with a little more force than usual. And this is the style, and they still use those beer caps. And this is a football. If you can't afford one, make one. This is a very popular game, and it's called Lagori, which all of you must have played at some point or the other. And those caps are currencies, so they have a whole underground economy of beer caps and Fanta caps, and those slabs of rocks. They're very and you'll find kids with pockets. And I'm not joking. I see kids playing this every day. This is on Mankut, the main road between Ghatkopar and Mankut. This is where it is. But that whole area, Chembur, and that's and even Navi Mumbai for that matter. I see a lot of kids playing there. This is a kid who made a gilli danda. This is this is the same park which I had shown you earlier. And this is a game called Billa. That's what they told me the game was, where it's similar to Lagori, but you throw slabs of rock, and again the currency here again is the caps. Hopscotch. That's another game that is popular. Then mostly with the girls. And there was this funny incident where I was trying to shoot some kids playing hopscotch, and they didn't know the rules. They're very small. They're probably 5 years or six, and they just saw the hopscotch drawing, the drawings, and they didn't know the rules. So there was a school kid who was about 10 or 12 walking by, and they asked, "Bhaiya, bhaiya, can you teach us how to play?" And that guy was confused. He had no clue how the game was played. And this was during the election. And during election, suddenly all the politicians are very interested in sports, and all the playgrounds in Mumbai had matches around that time, and the amount of the prize money was enormous, lots of money, and usually, and they didn't want young kids, they wanted some people in the 18 to 20 range, and that was only politicians know where to get the votes. They're pretty good. And this is in Nagpada, where the NBA has adopted a playground. But of course, kids play cricket, not. And this is Navi Mumbai. Navi Mumbai, of course, is special. We have baseball, and this is at NBSA ground. I think NBSA. They have a baseball, but these guys get evicted by the cricket players all the time. And this is again these guys are playing with wrestling cards and cricket cards, and usually whenever kids play this, there's always an adult who comes and chases them away because they think they're playing with cards and money. And of course, this is for the rich, and this is Snow World. And this is Mahim, where life is tough and the kids are tougher. But they were having real battles over there. And then to one more story. I think this is the last one. And this is about something that will probably be nostalgic after a few years, because once people stop reading newspapers, and probably for the rest of the world, it is that way. But in Mumbai or in India, newspaper is still being read, and even though the days are numbered, and if you, it's a layer I'm exploring, and what a person reads in public space, the newspaper or the magazines, how they read it, what they read, that itself is a very interesting way to look at what how we get an information, how we live. And a typical newspaper in a newspaper stand in Bombay has about newspapers in about 8 languages or 10 languages, and from all parts of India. And if you are a news addict, I would recommend picking up a random newspaper and start reading. And it's there's no entertainment like that. Anything from Kannada newspapers to employment newspapers, international newspapers, you get anything in Bombay. And one of the major reasons people read newspapers is staying in touch with home. I'm originally from Bangalore, so I put a picture from Bangalore or a Kannada newspaper. The ad is in English, but of course it's a Kannada newspaper, and it's a great way to stay in touch with home. And that is the one of the primary reasons why people read newspapers, or at least in public, or at least the kind of people who read newspapers in public. This is a Nepali newspaper that is published in Bombay, and there are three or four of them. And did you know that there's a bus from here to Nepal? You can take a bus, a daily bus that goes. And if you want to, so if anybody asks you which is the longest bus route from Bombay, it has to be the one to Nepal. It'll make a good story too someday. And the news in Nepal is Nepali newspaper is about Nepal and entertainment. They love entertainment. There's lots of entertainment for the Nepali community in Bombay, and I think they're a pretty big community too. And this is the Mallos will know, Jinu will know best. And a Malayalam newspaper is the most important page is the obituary. Yeah, and some Marathi newspapers, even Samna for that matter, has a quite a large obituary column because that is how you stay. I think it's the people from the West Coast have a thing, stay in touch with their home by knowing who's alive or or who is dead. And it's interesting, and even in the West Coast Marathi newspapers or in this, they have a lot of details, personal details, and you can actually geotag the person. You get the life history, and it's a if you it's like Twitter 140 characters. These guys can pack more than anybody, even Poonam Pandey can, for example. Yeah, matrimony is but again it's the same, the old people who look at it. I mean, for the children, not for themselves. And this is the most expensive newspaper that you find, the genre, and it is the Police News. And you find Police News in every language in Bombay. You name the language and you get a Police News with a little variation. They'll all be Police News with a suffix or a prefix, and they have and they sell for, this is 10 rupees, but usually they are in the 10 to 20 range, and they are the most expensive newspapers that you can find in Bombay. Crime sells. And this is a tramp, a well-dressed tramp actually, who was reading his newspaper. He's got a transistor too. He's listening to the news, and the thing is, he would have bought this newspaper for about a rupee or two. And comparable, if I have to take a comparison for a cost of a newspaper, if you have to buy Dawn, the Dawn, which is the newspaper in Karachi, which is the English newspaper, it costs the equivalent of rupees 20 to 25. That is what people pay for news in a comparable city or anywhere. Even if you buy a Sri Lankan newspaper, they are expensive. But in India, you can buy newspapers for as less as 1 rupee, which is why I guess newspaper reading is still a habit in India. And of course, by lunchtime, some newspapers become. This is just an interesting place for old people to sit. I don't know how they will climb on, but and of course, this is how you prevent smelling others' armpits. And that's a Bengali man who has to read his Anand Bazar Patrika. And that's Inqilab, which is a Urdu newspaper. And you actually get quite a few Urdu newspapers in Bombay, especially if you in certain areas like Nagpada or Ray Road. And they're usually editions of newspapers that are in different parts. Like if you want Hyderabad, you get news from there. You want Faizabad, you get news from there. It's like that. So it's pretty interesting. I usually buy it and look at the ads because I can't read the other part. And that's a man walking to work reading a newspaper. It's usually difficult shooting women reading newspaper in public. So the minute I found one, I immediately snapped it up. And that's, of course, auto rickshaw drivers live off news. And that's from a flight. And that's one interesting place to pick up newspapers because you find editions from the that you don't usually get here. I think this is a Tamil one. I think it's Dinamalar or Dinakaran, sorry. That's a Gujarati newspaper, Midday. And this is the newsroom of Jamaati Islam in Shivajinagar, which is a strange place to find all kinds of newspaper. You find newspapers from all languages there. And this is from one of the villages in Chembur. And that's a new newspaper that's been circulating these days. It's called Sanatan Prabhat, which is a Marathi newspaper. And if you want to know what is the outrage tomorrow, this is a newspaper to see because, for example, if Whatever comes on Twitter tomorrow, the outrage is first seen here. Like for instance, if you the story about say they don't call Nathuram Godse, they call him Pandit Nathuram Godse. Things like that, very simple things, but it's a very interesting sociological experience. And of course, this is a Dalit newspaper, and there are quite a few of them. And and that's you just go to a newsstand and you can pick up any of these. That's the beauty of the thing, that you can read it and you can get different opinions. You know what others are thinking or what others are reading, and you'll always wonder, like, if I read what am I reading? Am I getting a biased news? Am I getting a clear news? Or am I it's like if you get all your news from Arnab Goswami, how will your life be? So some of the newspapers actually make you think. And since I buy a lot of newspapers, I think one piece of advice: the best news that you get is usually in the economic newspapers. Could be Economic Times or Mint or Business Standard. The best political news is, or any news, happens to be in the financial newspapers, because it's they sell knowledge and not sensations. And of course, you get gems like this. Is a Samna headline. And then another thing about news is it's hyper local. Whatever you do, it is the newspapers are hyper local. And this is a newspaper from Bandra, which Bandra Times, as the name says. It's a community newspaper, but these are kind of things that you can pick up and actually know what's happening in your neighborhood. This is a very interesting newspaper, Dakshin Mumbai, and then there are two or three Hindi newspapers from southern part of Mumbai, which have very interesting masthead designs that keep changing and stuff like that. They do a lot of experiments, especially the Hindi ones. And there's another one, popular one, which is released, which is, in fact, Hindi newspapers are launched almost every month. Every month there's at least two or three new Hindi newspapers. Probably is the fastest growing newspaper segment or population in the world, because the more literates we get, the more readers we have. And the latest craze is a newspaper called Dabang Dunia, to be precise. Of course, this is from Navi Mumbai. And in Navi Mumbai, it's usually during elections that you see a lot of new newspapers, and then they close. Of course, another local one. And nothing as good as reading rappers of newspapers. I think there's a picture I missed, and this is how a typical Indian father talks to his family. And these are something that are disappearing very fast. And these are the newspaper reading standard, the Vachanalayas. And so I thought I'll just take a few pictures of them before they disappear totally. This is in Vadavli Gav again, and this is during the election. So it's all the ads are covered up with newspapers. It's a The only reason they survive is because the BMC is very strict about ads by political parties, and having a newspaper stand like this ensures that they have year-round ads on display on roads. This is in Dharavi, and it shows the kind of language that is spoken there. There's English, Hindi, Marathi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and you find any all kinds of languages. Of course, it's a what you call an old one, but there are few which have a lot of variety. This is in Parel, and these are the ones that survive or almost gone. See, it was a newspaper reading stand once upon a time. This is a Samajwadi Party reading room, and that's it. So there are a lot of layers to come to show, but I thought two or three would be all that we can take. Any questions?
I think we have a question here, right? Somebody did. Okay. Any questions for Gopal? Yeah.
Gopal, I don't have a question, but I've heard this from you. But again, just for the audience to know, I would like to know how you started out as a photographer.
Okay.
The story behind that.
It started off like most people. I think it was in my case it was a digital camera, which my wife, who's here, she gave it to me some time back, and I used to have it, but I never used to use it. So I decided, okay, let me try using it. And this was when I was in Bangalore for a short period where I was working there, and I didn't really use my camera. So I thought, why not take it to work and shoot something on the way. So I started clicking pictures on my way to work, and this was in 2008, I guess. And I have never stopped after that. In the sense, I always carry a camera. Only thing, the camera has changed. Now I shoot with a mobile phone. All the pictures that you saw here are from my mobile phone. Most of them, actually, 90% of them. And that camera is, of course, it's become too small, or now it's large actually. And the thing is, at that point of time, there were a lot of people on Flickr who were posting pictures, but uh, Bangalore as a city was not explored. I was living in Bangalore then, and everybody shoots the equivalent of Crawford Market or the popular places, but nobody was shooting the real what do you call? I can call it the layers. In Bangalore, it was the like it's not very. It's just a little more smaller version of Bombay, and there are lots of things to discover. And m- more than photography, it also self discovery in the sense it's like I see things that I didn't know existed, or like for instance, I start reading newspapers that I wouldn't normally read, or I would go to villages or places that I would normally go to. It was like breaking boundaries, and it opened up my mind and into to a lot of other things.
Yeah. This.
Hi, this is Sandeep here. I just want to know basically how do you take photography as because many of us take it as a commercial way, some as a take it as hobby. So how do you take this as a photography?
Uh, it depends on what your interests are. Uh, I had tried becoming a photographer, and then I realized that I was a very bad businessman, so I never really succeeded at it, because it's the minute it goes professional, it's a different thing. It's more it's work, and you need to be. It takes a different kind of regimen. I am it. See, ultimately, a photography depends on what you like, or what is your interest, or what is your general outlook of life. If you want, like, if you like, I know friends who like nature, and they they do amazing stories about wildlife parks, not just shooting animals or anything, but people who tell stories about rivers, people who tell stories about communities who live in extreme climates or extreme places. So it all depends on what your interests are. If you like architecture, or if you're in architecture, then that's a big uh, place to explore. But usually, if you're a beginner, or if you just have a digital camera, it's best to try a lot of different things, and then slowly you'll develop a sense of uh, uh, you'll understand what you like and what stories you like to tell, or what works commercially, or what doesn't work commercially. It all depends on your interest, or how you look at the world.
Thank you.
Any other any other questions for Gopal? Gopal, there's one very interesting picture that I saw. Is two faces patched up together. One was Buddha and the other was
Yeah.
Dr. Ambedkar.
Yeah.
And imagery goes a very long way in making gods. You know, so I thought that was like a very interesting picture. In fact, one picture I saw in Airoli. of course, Photoshop has actually made a big difference. So there is an aspiring politician who is from the Republican Party of India, and you know how politicians pose, right? They're always either it is "Chalo Shivaji Park" kind of pose or some directional thing,
Yeah.
right? So here he's standing very meekly, and there is a picture of Ambedkar whose hand is coming and blessing him.
Correct.
Kind of a thing, So you notice a lot of, I mean, politicians really masters at manipulating the image, and I thought that image is a way of making Ambedkar God. I mean, he's on his way already.
Yeah,
He's just
it's a codification of. It's right now you will also see like if you go to places like there are certain parts of I think Shivaji Nagar where there is an organization called Shiva Dharma or something. They call Shiva Dharma Samstha, and what they do is their whole idea is codification of Chhatrapati Shivaji. So it's like Shiva Dharma is not Lord Shiva. In their case, it is Shiva. So their imagery is very interesting. In fact, I'm trying to get good pictures of this because it takes some time to develop a story. Then there were things like during Asaram Bapu when he got into trouble, or he's still in trouble, but when he got into trouble, anywhere you look under a banyan tree, you would find a picture of him, which is thrown away because people don't throw it in the dustbin. They throw old pictures of godmen under a tree. So and there is the most photographed man in Bombay is Ramdas Atavale. So his pictures are everywhere now for like since what 20 years. He's been like there are more pictures of him than anybody else in this city. And now, in fact, he's very innovative in the sense after he got into power, his dress sense has changed. Or after the elections, before the elections, he tried doing illustrations. So there are lots of interesting illustration or portraits of him across the city. So the politicians are actually the reason I like photography is I am in advertising. So my whole my day job is advertising, and I sit in a cubicle and write ads for people who consume things, and uh, and I was totally out of touch with what happens. I think it happens to architects also. You guys read books, you design houses. Probably you don't, but how do people live? So it was the same kind of problem where what are people doing? What are the habits? Only then can you write ads. So imageries like these, like how you have the Buddha, that comes uh, from my advertising background. Noticing things like this, or probably even newspapers. It comes from things like this.
all right. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi Gopal, how do you make people comfortable while clicking their photographs? Because some people might feel objectional because you're just wandering and then taking their pictures.
Yeah, it's. I'm lucky, so people don't seem to mind me taking pictures because I've rarely felt. I've very rarely have anybody told me not to click pictures. It's also about uh, probably because I use a small camera. That is one thing. Uh, yeah, because the minute you carry a large camera, people assume that you're from the press or your image is going to be published or things like that. So that automatically puts people out. Second is smile works wonders. So talk to people, smile. People always like. Actually, in India, Mumbai especially, people are friendly. So you rarely find people objecting. The only people who object are people who are extremely rich and live in places like Pali Hill and places like that. There are certain places to avoid. You can never shoot general public outside gateway of India. You can not near the Taj. It's just across, but there are certain places where people will object to you. But generally, like kids will never object. And Mumbai is it's a nice place for street photography because nobody really and one good trick you can try is showing people the pictures you click because that usually brings on a smile. So talk to people, smile at people, show them pictures, have a conversation, and you get better pictures. Also, don't. I think it's being friendly. And in my case, my language skills are very bad. So that helps to a certain extent because I just talk through gestures and stuff like that, so it works.
Right. I think that's going to be the last question for Gopal, because we also have another film screening after this. So I want all of you to give Gopal a very, very loud round of applause.